The truth is our prime minister's a real racist. They say you should be grateful we're the least racist.
I appreciate Dave is well known, he's a rapper, he's a popular artist, but his comments about Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, are totally inaccurate. I've known our Prime Minister for a long time, I've worked with him for a long time, and he absolutely is not a racist.
I agree with that entirely. Let me ask you about the Brits, because a big story today about Dave, who was up there, a sort of rap star, music star of the modern age, gets up on stage and sings an extra verse on his song Black, in which he accuses the Prime Minister of being a racist. Do you think Boris Johnson's a racist?
Well, I think you only have to look at Boris Johnson's record. He talks about Piccaninny smiles. He's recently refused to condemn the issue about the question as to whether black people might have a lower IQ than other people. I mean, I think the evidence is pretty clear.
So you think Boris Johnson's a racist?
I think he is, yes, and I think that the evidence is clear. I have to troll through any number of articles he's written, and of course he then puts that down to, I'm trying to open up the debate. When you read some of those articles, it doesn't look like a debate to me. It looks more like sermonising.
All right. Let me ask you a second question then. Is Jeremy Corbyn anti-Semitic?
I don't believe Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic.
Really?
I don't believe he is. I believe that Jeremy Corbyn's made the case for a whole range of communities over the years, and people who know Jeremy Corbyn, certainly better than I do, would say exactly the same.
Well, why can't you fix the anti-Semitism problem in the Labour Party then?
Well, we've been trying to deal with it.
Yeah, you keep saying that. It's not acceptable anymore, Peter. It is not acceptable anymore just to keep saying we've been trying to fix it. You haven't fixed it. You've had years to fix it, and it hasn't been done.
Well, and the point I'm trying to make is that we have been trying to fix it.
Well, why can't you fix it?
Problem. Well, look, you can look at the figures that we've...
No, there are people in the Labour Party who clearly don't like Jewish people. Well, why don't you just kick them out?
Well, there are proposals, there are in fact policies in that where they do get kicked out. A sort of preemptory throwing people out who are anti-Semitic. Those proposals are being introduced.
But would you say that there are no anti-Semitic people left in the Labour Party then?
I'm sure there are people who are anti-Semitic in the Labour Party, and the sooner that they get thrown out, the better.
Well, why don't you throw them out today? Well, if you know who they are, throw them out.
Well, because that is the process that is going on.
Come on. You've just called the Prime Minister racist, and you've got a glass house that you can't have any stones thrown at.
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm trying to say is that we're trying to deal with it, and that's been moving on. Now, is it fast enough? The old argument is it fast enough? No, but we have introduced those proposals where you can effectively summarily throw people out of the Labour Party. And I think more...
Nobody's buying it, I'm afraid, Peter.
More will be done.
Nobody's buying it.
I can't argue that. People have just got to see action speaking louder than words.
Yeah, but they don't, do they? Peter Dowd, thank you very much indeed. Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, thinks Boris Johnson's a racist, but can't do anything about the anti-Semites in the Labour Party. How extraordinary. Guys, I feel like I should ask you about Peter Dowd there, Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. What did you make of his accusation that Boris Johnson is a racist?
I thought it was outrageous, to be honest with you, because, again, all of these kind of accusations against Boris Johnson, whatever you think about him politically, whatever you think about his policies in relation to all these things, there's nothing that convinces that he actually has a kind of visceral dislike of black and brown people in this country.
It's a pretty outrageous accusation to make. I mean, I've got a tweet here from somebody who says, if everybody thinks Boris Johnson's racist, why don't they report him to the police?
Well, exactly. And the other thing is that, of course, like, you know, the issue of racism is something that we do need to take seriously. But by throwing these accusations around so willingly, you do degrade that conversation. You make it just something, just a kind of cudgel that you use against people. And I'm also really worried about the more you devalue the term, the more difficult you find it to kind of actually identify it when you do find it, or to rail against it, or to challenge it.
Well, I think that's right. It sort of decriminalises, in a way, the people who are actually racist and who need to be called out in society, Benjamin.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty unwise of him to say that. But look, the Prime Minister just the other day hired an advisor into 10 Downing Street who said that that black people on average have lower IQs than white people, among other shocking comments, and then they refused to say that he disagreed with them. Now, I strongly suspect he does disagree with it, but the fact that that culture's been allowed to grow, are they trying to play to people with those prejudices?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the trouble with that whole scenario was that it was awfully badly handled. Dominic Cummings made the mistake of putting out a kind of clarion call for weirdos and freaks to come and join the government.
He certainly got one. Yeah.
Suddenly got surprised when they sort of brought one in the keep net, you know. And Kwasi Kwarteng certainly yesterday was very strong in his condemnation of that racist language. But also there is an element to the fact that whenever anybody is now hired by Downing Street, somebody's going to go back through everything they've ever said, everything they've ever written, and take it out of context and use it against them. I'm not saying that this guy should be supported in any way, shape or form, but, you know, lots of things have been written and lots of things have been said by many people. It doesn't make them racist necessarily, particularly if they think that they are sort of, you know, thinkers, if you know what I mean.
There is a bit of that. The only thing I would just chuck in, particularly on the Savitsky stuff, is the fact that, you know, there definitely is a problem with some sections of the right who seem to be like flirting with like neo-eugenicist stuff. You see bits of it in those kind of corners of discourse. We should talk about it. But I feel like that's all the more reason to be able to just talk about these things in a very specific kind of way and not take quotes from a Boris Johnson article from 10 years ago out of context and use that to damn him. There are parts of this discussion that do need to be talked about, but I think this kind of, the way it's just become a weapon in the culture war, I don't think it's positive.
And I also think that his response on the anti-Semitic scenario was hopeless.
Yeah, I mean,
as ever.
I mean, look, if you want to have a zero tolerance because you're calling out Boris Johnson's comments about Pekingese smiles or letterbox Muslim women, fine, but you have to apply the same rules to your own side and to yourself. And it seemed that he wasn't willing to do that. And he says that he's supporting Rebecca Long-Bailey and Angela Rayner, the Corbyn candidates for the leadership. You know, this seems like his head is buried pretty far in the sand. And it frustrates me as someone, you know, on the centre left that people like him just refuse to accept that, because the truth is, in the most brutal way, the voters saw the reality of it. You know, I'd love a Labour government, but it has to make the effort to see daylight before it's going to be anywhere near, and he didn't show any sign of that.
No, he really didn't. Richard is in Manchester. Let's go to the calls and get some common sense from some of you people out there. Richard, very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for taking my call. Mike, I'm absolutely furious at this guy, Peter Dowd, who's been scoring cheap points against the Prime Minister.
Yes.
And, you know, if it was me, I'd get into court and I'd make him go back on that. And
well, I'm with you. I think it's libelous to call somebody a racist, isn't it?
Quite. Yeah, exactly. And he has no rights whatsoever to bring that up, just scoring a cheap point on behalf of the Labour Party, who are in dire straits. If they've got to do things like that to get back in power, God help them.
Well, they tried all this, didn't they, back in December? I mean, they were calling Boris Johnson a racist. They were calling him untrustworthy. They were calling him, you know, basically a man who betrayed women, who could not be counted upon to keep any kind of promise, and nobody believed them.
Quite. And also, Mike, I was a socialist all my life, and then I found out what Blair was doing. Yeah. So I switched my affections now to the Conservative Party. And he's done more in 4 or 5 months before the last election, and now, after that, to bring into being the laws and the manifesto that he said he would. And he has to be given time to do that. And people who don't give him time, he's got 5 years to do it. And I'll give an honest opinion. I don't think there's anybody who they make as a leader in the Labour Party. I don't think there's anybody who can overturn him if he wants to stay there for another 20 years. Yeah. If he does what the people's government want him to do. Quite. And I think he's a guy who will actually do that. But can I just comment about what the guy, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it, Szynski said.
Yeah, Kaczynski.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
I apologise.
No, don't worry.
He did say that, you know, the EU really have been controlling our agricultural policy for years and years and years and years. And you can imagine they would stop us doing what Szynski said, and that is let the farmers divert the water, you know, with culverts and things like round the fields, and these things wouldn't happen. It's absolute common sense.
Exactly.
But the EU have been controlling us so strictly over the years. Now we've woken up. Now we're out. Then let's go
It's funny,
forward.
Isn't it, how the leader of Herefordshire Council is quite happy to bang on about climate change being the reason, but when you say, well, what about the European Union regulations, he doesn't want to comment about that.
Oh, no.
How bizarre.
Good point.
Yeah, Richard, thank you very much indeed. Let's quickly go to Tina, who's in West London. Hi, Tina.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning.
How are you?
Very well indeed. What can you say?
I'm not very well at all, Mike, and I'm disgusted with Priti Patel. And not disgusted with you, because you're lovely.
Thank you.
Well, you are lovely, but you're at the opposite end of the scale of me politically.
All right. What's the problem with Priti Patel then?
You haven't got long enough, but let's move on to racist Boris.
All right. You think he's a racist?
I will say I think he's a racist. I would even go further to say I know he's a racist.
That's quite a serious allegation you're making, though.
Okay, I'll say is a racist, and I'll say without due prejudice, right? Because I'm not going to put myself up for any.
Yeah, but if you say it, right, you might have to be held to account in a court of law. So you have to be very sure.
Let's be very sure then. I think he's a racist then.
I don't think that's a defence. you might. Okay, here's what I would. If I was advising you, right? If I was advising you, you could say, "I'm slightly concerned that he might be."
I'm extremely concerned that he might be racist. My prime minister, not my prime minister. I'm extremely concerned.
Let's talk to Andrew, who's in Harrogate. Wants to talk about immigration. Hi, Andrew.
Good morning. Good morning, Mike.
Morning. What do you want to tell me?
Well, I think the government's proposals are going to be very good for working people's incomes. We should see an improvement in pay rates and a big improvement in working conditions.
Yes.
You know, a lot of the gig economy stuff, the false self-employment, you know, the likes of Sports Direct, the exploitative employments, we're going to see that disappear.
You think employers are going to get more responsible then?
Do I think what?
Do you think the employers are going to get more responsible? It's
market forces. They're going to have to be kinder, or they're not, or the people are going to walk.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the attitude of, was it Asda, the changing the contracts?
Yes.
They're lording it over the staff. I mean, you know, my daughter and son work in London, and my daughter's on minimum wage, and she's got astronomical rent to pay. You know, she works hard. I'm glad she does. But she's going to see an improvement from one end of the country to the other.
Yes, well, I hope you're right, Andrew, because I think if that is the case, people will get firmly behind Priti Patel and this immigration policy that she's bringing in, and it will start to work, and it will start to work wonders then for the rest of the country as well. But I think Priti Patel's on the right track here, because at the end of the day, something has to be done. You have to have an immigration system that works, and at the moment, we don't have one of those. Let's talk to Steve, who's calling in from Surrey. Hello, Steve.
Hi.
How you doing?
Not bad, mate. I totally agree with you, 1,000%, and Priti Patel. I really like Priti Patel.
I think she's doing an okay job, isn't she?
Yeah, she's great, and she's fantastic looking. She's the best looking MP in Westminster by a long way.
Well, I mean, I'm glad to see that you've fallen for the lowest common denominator here. But, you know, what about the policy, though?
Well, I mean, from my point of view, I've had a head injury and everything, and I'm retired now. I'm not on the dole or nothing. But anyway, I've been a bricklayer for 40 years, a 5-year apprenticeship. When I left school in 1979, 1978, I earned £50 a week as an apprentice. I gave my mum £5. My mate next door left at the same time as me. He worked in a shoe shop for £42 a week.
Right.
Now, obviously, in that period of time, I've earned a great more money than that. But, you know, I've seen the building trade over the last 20 years, more and more young people not coming into it, or coming into it later, and then demanding more money, going through apprenticeships and everything. Also, I now live on a boat and everything, and I've seen rural crime. And, you know, a lot of it is East European. But the other thing that never gets talked about is the dependency now on tax credits amongst families. I mean,
yes.
My ex-wife, she works for a senior police force in the buying department. I won't tell you which one it is. And she's on £10 an hour. Now, she earns more money from tax credits than she does.
It's bonkers, isn't it? I mean, and I think that's absolutely where it's gone wrong. Steve, your line's not great, but so do call in again because we'll have a longer conversation. But the problem, Steve's right. The idea that we, as the taxpayers, actually subsidise employers who can't afford or choose not to pay enough money to the people that work for them is absolutely bonkers. You know, I mean, I'm sorry if you're not making enough money, but basically the people for whom you work should pay you a decent wage. I should not have to give you money from what I make in order to let you have a better lifestyle. It makes absolutely no sense at all. Let's go to the phones and let's talk to Russell, who's up in Glasgow. Hello, Russell.
Hi, good morning, Dick.
Good morning. What would you like to tell me?
I was listening to your programme. It's quite good. I was talking about Priti Patel's point systems.
Thank you.
I do agree with it. But I would say one thing, like being an immigrant myself.
Yes.
I came to this country and I'm working as a pharmacist now. I had to go through very hardships. I never relied on tax credits.
Okay.
But now when I'm back in my field and working as a pharmacist, it's not like immigrant coming in this country not working.
Mm.
The problem in the system is when somebody comes to this country on any visa base, it's not followed up properly.
Mm.
Like, there should be a system, like, fair enough, even point system or no point system. Somebody comes in the country as an immigrant, give them a window. Like, you have got 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years to prove yourself where you're coming for, you're acquiring it. If you're no, you're going back.
Yeah.
Simple.
I think we definitely need a system that works in that way, don't we?
That's right. And secondly, the reason we are looking for immigrants is, as somebody was talking about the tax credits. To be very honest, like, once I pay my taxes out of my salary, and whatever I'm left with, if I sit on tax credits, I can get more than that.
Yeah.
And that's from working as a professional.
And that's wrong, isn't it? That is totally wrong.
And believe me, there are people, like when you go to work, he says, oh, could you do another day for me, please?
Yeah.
I need somebody at work.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I can't do it. It's going to affect my tax credits.
Yes. Yeah,
I only want to
that
work
system
16
has
hours.
to change. In fact, you've just reminded me, Russell, I should get back onto Priti Patel and just say to her, you know, have a word with your man at the Treasury, the new guy who's the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and get rid of that system. It doesn't work. It's crazy. Absolute madness.